video voice vlog. And this is VoyMonk video voice vlog for Friday. Yeah, Friday. I promise that's not me trying to sing or anything like that. Just, I guess, infusing a little bit of my excitement with the fact that it is Friday. It's a Friday vlog, Friday video voice vlog. And recapping, I guess, a bit of what I've talked about the earlier week. I think probably all this, last month I've kind of done like vlogs and then kind of capped them on a Friday. And that's not a specific way I plan to do things intentional, but that's kind of the way things have worked because that's the way that I fit things in. I've talked about my experience as far as in radio and background, as far as what has inspired me to do this channel and to do these vlogs, video voice vlogs. Gotta get that in me, and a video voice vlog. It's not a vlog, it's a video voice vlog. But anyways, telling you everything as bit as it relates to my who, what, where, why, and how in terms of the channel. I've kind of focused and concentrated this week on other parts of, just not just my life, and I guess not, intentionally emotionally dumping or anything like that. Just getting to know who this voice is, VoyMonk here, that if you've watched or listened to and getting to know, you know who I am. And I talked about my ADHD, my anxiety, and major depression. These are things clinically diagnosed. I didn't just decide to come up one day and say, I think I had those things. Of course, I knew that there were things that were wrong towards the middle of my life, or kind of my early 20s and stuff like that, and even before then, but I didn't necessarily know what those things were. And honestly, it's not one of those situations where, I have a solution looking for a problem type of thing. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about mental illness and, why it's so prevalent and why it's so diagnosed, because whatever. Like I said, I'm not here to get into the whole philosophy about that. I'm just telling you about who I am. Along with, like I said, my radio broadcasting background, I'm stupid. I'm fat. I'm obese. I'm ugly. These are things that are true about me. I am not a good-looking guy. I don't have a girlfriend or wife. I'm not married. I think if you listen to anything that I've done, you see why. And that's not just me trying to be funny, ha, 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 self-deprecating humor, but that's just truthfully who I am. And it's humorous in a way. I talk about major depression and anxiety. People are like, well, right now you don't sound very depressed. It's more than that, right? You scratch the surface of anyone, doing this. And like I said, I talk about editing and makeup and stuff like that, but excuse me, there are things about life just in general that we have as a practice in, which has a lot to do with why I don't do editing or makeup or things that add to whatever. I'm sure I can be very phony. I'm sure I can put on when I need to or feel to as a way of coping or projecting or protecting myself. Obviously, my mama didn't birth me and name me VoyMonk, so there's that. There are things that go beyond just anticipation and perception or whatever. Just because one thing is true doesn't mean another thing is not true, and whatever. Just because someone is wrong doesn't necessarily mean you can know their intentions, or you can determine that they've lied or misspoke, or there's untruth in an intentional way. There are ways and evidence to do that, don't get me wrong. Yes, but not all evidence is proof, and like I said, what people evaluate and how is very important. So, like I said, when it comes to my life and my experience and who I am, it just simply is what it is. When it comes to major depression and anxiety, which I haven't talked about this week, and I kind of wanted to, wait till this vlog because it's a little bit longer. I can kind of go into that. with the depression, how do I put it? I mean, it could be a result of just the in life decisions that I've made poorly, just as anyone regularly does. So, what separates my major depression as opposed to just, maybe just being a crappy person or having a crappy life? And those things, that they could be relevant. The thing of it is, like I said, this is a clinical diagnosis, meaning I was tested, meaning I actually went and, seen someone and talked about my issues that I didn't necessarily know what was wrong with me. And eventually, through that process, that's how I got diagnosed, and that's who I am. However, like I said, even I didn't necessarily know what depression was. I didn't know what anxiety, is. I mean, I'm anxious, certainly. Of course, people get nervous, It's just like, just because, you're concerned about the heights that you may climb doesn't necessarily mean you have a phobia or a fear of heights or flying. And hopefully that kind of makes sense. I mean, there's distinctions that are made, and I'm not here to quantify or qualify any of those types of things. Again, I'm talking and speaking to my experiences, and they're speaking my truth. That's not what I'm just saying. I'm speaking to my experiences and the things that I've had. And as far as depression is concerned, I didn't necessarily know that I had it. I certainly had certain attitudes about what I thought it was. It's like, well, I just get over it and stuff. And I never did recreational drugs because I just simply didn't. My father was an alcoholic, so I definitely understood and was aware that I had a propensity and probably a genetic predisposition to becoming addicted to things. And so for me, while it wasn't alcohol, it was food, which isn't necessarily any better. I am obese. I need to lose weight. It definitely comes with type 2 diabetes and a whole myriad of other issues as well. And they're things that I have to deal with in my life. So when it comes to depression, like I said, there's good reasons to be depressed about things. I mean, if you do something stupid, you get called out on it, which I'm sure I've had plenty of experiences with that. That will ultimately lead to, not feeling so great. But my depression wasn't about that. It wasn't just about, me making poor life decisions and choices alone. Sometimes it had to do with the fact that I didn't know what was behind my poor life decisions and choices, aside from maybe just labels like being lazy or stupid or whatever. Just, like I said, some of those things are apt, sometimes they're not. But when you get into whittling them down to the definitions of what's behind it, like, I'm angry, right? Like, why are you angry? If you're stupid, why are you stupid, right? And these are things, as far as psychologically, probably don't always make a lot of sense, but it's why people struggle. I mean, even people that have these conditions struggle because, I've said knowledge in and of itself isn't necessarily power. And if you've sought treatment, if you tried to get help, I think you know what I'm talking about. I mean, truth be told, some people who are psychologists and really well gifted and intelligent, some of them are the stupidest people in the world. And some of those people, are even more effed up than the people that sometimes they're in line to try to help. And that's not a criticism. That's not to be overly, critical or attacking anyone. It's just that we are all human beings doing the best that we can. And so with that being the case, like I said, nothing is perfect. Obviously, the things that I felt that I knew at one point in my life have changed with actual validated evidence over time. But like I said, having major depression, having major anxiety, they're very real things. They're consequences of the brain and how it works, or rather sometimes how it works or the way that it works differently in some cases. Like I said, for me, my depression had more to do with the fact that it wasn't just that I was feeling bad or down or, having a bad experience, in the scope of, different times or whatever. It's just my depression affects me, for me, all the time. I'm always depressed. If you ask me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, how are you feeling? Well, yeah, I might have a different outlook the moment, that minute or whatever. But for me, my depression, it was always there. It's a constant thing. It's a major thing. It's one of those things that's, it's not helped or hurt by other conditions. And so that's why you could have two people that have major depression, that, they're two people, they may not have the same experiences, or overtly they may not look to be the same on the surface. And so that's why, just like everything else in life, like I mentioned yesterday, I mean, just because you're rich, you're famous, you have a lot of money, doesn't mean that you don't have problems, right? I mean, the lead singer of Linkin Park was another person, Audio Slave. I mean, people can, on the outside, appear to be just fine. And according to the way people say, it's like, oh, they got money. They have, this, they have that. They should be doing just fine. And sometimes it's not necessarily mental illness. It can be a variable, lots of other things. And again, I'm not speaking to that because I'm no expert. I don't know. And that's not what this is about. But when I tell you about who I am and my life experiences, those are the things that are part of me. I don't drink. I don't do recreational drugs, but I've ate. And as a result, I've become fat, obese, and, I've accumulated some health issues that I definitely do the best thing I can about. I have major anxiety. So on top of the fact that all of those other conditions, my response to stress and things that normally go on are to either overreact or to overthink, like with the ADHD. So therefore, something that may come, be, easier for one person might be a lot more difficult for me. I could have an interaction or social interaction that leaves, doesn't leave me for a long time, whereas some people, it isn't something that they think about 5 seconds or 5 minutes after it happens. So, like I said, those are the parts of who I am. That's why I'm explaining those. I know I'm getting kind of repetitive with that, but I just want to make sure that I'm not diagnosing, I'm not making indictments on anyone, just sharing my experiences and explaining why, which is, it's a part of me just as much as anything else that I'll talk about. Like I said, I am not a perfect person. And that's, it could be made better by the fact maybe I put makeup on. But I think in some ways, sometimes some of the things that people don't see has a lot more to do with the fact that people really don't see things beyond sometimes what we are conditioned to sometimes put up. And like I said, that's not a diagnosis or indictment or a proclamation or anything like that. But, just as I mentioned earlier this week, just because Timmy doesn't have all of his arms and legs, and he's been a major success in directs a Fortune 500 company or something like that, doesn't mean that the guy that has arms and legs, isn't having his own experiences and perception-wise or reality is having a worse time than someone else. It's more than meets the eye is a description that I think applies to more than just mechanical robots in a Hasbro movie. So, like I said, I'm smiling, but yeah, I deal with depression. I deal with anxiety. This format where I can talk and speak into the microphone and possibly, not likely, based on some of the views or less of the views, it's the possibility that I could be speaking to millions or thousands of people, and I have on occasion done that a little bit. It's probably easier for me to do than to have actual conversations in real life situations with people, because there's more to me than even I know and have known, and I get better with that. But hopefully, if you're experiencing the same thing, and like I said, this isn't meant to be emotional dumping or telling you my problems or anything like that, but this is me telling you who I am. This is definitely not going to be the thing that is going to be the theme or about this channel, but I definitely am fine with making it clear this is who I am and about this channel. And in spite of all this, like I said, this channel is about me sharing my thoughts, my passions, and doing what it is I love to do. And if I don't want to go into that because I think I covered for about the last 3 weeks that, but yeah, like I said, that's what this is about. So when I share my experiences, for example, doing selling, maybe if you're listening to this, you understand maybe what I mean as far as I wasn't really great with selling because I had no motivation or want to do that kind of thing. I was not really great as far as a lot of the physical chores and as far as activity when it comes to other kind of jobs that I've had. I'm not much of a manual labor type of guy for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because of, again, that's just not who I am. Like I said, radio was the thing that I decided a long time ago that was something that inspired me, that I had a passion for, with or without actual talent. So I don't know, but yeah, I believe this is something I can do because this is the thing that I feel. And I think the thing that was kind of funny is when I was in radio school and learning my craft in that. One of the things I did, because I went to school with people, I've had experience and met people, and some have gone on to do other things, and some have whatever. Anyways, one of the more successful students at in my class, great guy. He's actually, I'm not going to name drop or anything like that, but he does radio and he's actually pretty popular. I don't know scale wise, whatever, but he was kind of a star at the very beginning when I started my radio class. And, it's just like anyone else. I had my thoughts and my doubts and stuff like that about what I was doing, as I should. In fact, like I said, life lessons, right? But one of the things that I was having a bit of trouble with is that one of the things that this guy was really great at is he was extremely funny. I mean, he had a natural talent. He had natural charisma, or riz, as the kids call it today. And I wasn't exactly sure how he was able to do that. I know what the nature of putting on is, radio, that kind of thing, and whatever. But for him, it was a completely natural thing. And people genuinely liked this guy, and he was funny. And I remembered asking him specifically about, how does he do it? I actually, tried to, at least get some, I don't want to say advice, but maybe pick his brain a little bit, because he's a really genuinely nice guy. When I knew him, I met him. And when I asked him, basically his response was that, look, if you don't believe in what it is you're doing, if you don't find it funny, if you don't think it's funny, if you're not honestly interested, and I'm not quoting word for word, but, then, kind of how is anyone else going to, right? So meaning that if I thought something was funny, then that's what I should go with, not what I thought other people would think was funny. And to this day, I'm not very funny. So apparently that knowledge and that information didn't go very far, but it did. It resonated, and it was something that did definitely changed my perspective, as whether it was something that I engaged with or I incorporated or whatever. It was information that I was glad to have. And it's like, if I don't know if he was speaking so much to confidence, more to that if it wasn't something that I believed in, then it's probably, it probably was something that I needed to think about. Like I said, I'm not quoting word. I mean, this was almost like, God, I think maybe 20 years ago, maybe something like that. It was a long time ago. But yeah, it was affectional. And like I said, the funny thing is he went on to do great things. He's in radio broadcasting. I don't know what else he's done. He's definitely a character. He's a personality, but that's genuinely who he is and was. And like I said, he's one of a few people that I've known through the year that have gone on to do great things. Most have gone on to do probably nothing, just like me or whatever. I didn't necessarily keep track. But the point there being is that if I didn't believe in what I'm doing here, and that's why authenticity is so important, is being inspired by conversations like that. Because I wasn't always. I think for the most part, after I had that conversation, I didn't incorporate it right away. I didn't really do anything with that. I still was kind of a bit phony. I still, because of my antisocial anxieties and things like that, I wasn't really too terribly successful. Because, there's what you think you ought to be and who you actually are. And I think probably the conflict that I had was that what if who I wanted to be or who I wasn't actually good enough to be doing whatever it is I was doing. And that could still be true. Those are some hard truths in life, regardless to how I felt about it. So, yeah. That was my experience as far as radio and other stuff. And, that's a great deal to do with who I am and telling you who I am. So that maybe if you have the same kind of experiences, you'll share. If you have the same kind of backgrounds or, passions in life, that's, I think, hopefully me telling you about myself, maybe you can compare notes, or maybe you can go, or maybe go, I had this situation and stuff. Like I said, there's so many things in life that are just not guaranteed and you don't know. And we push through anyways. I think sometimes, or I should say a lot of times, people kind of wonder why people do the stupid things that they do. And the way I guess quantify or qualify stupidity is it doesn't necessarily have to do with intelligence. You can have a 200 IQ, and if a beautiful blonde who's voluptuous walks in the room, that may mean absolutely nothing because, it's like you're predisposed, you're focused on something while you're, being distracted from anything else. And I think as much as a person could know, even if you know more than anyone on the planet, there's always something that you don't know. Like if you're walking down the street and the bus is coming down the other direction, right? I mean, doesn't matter what else you know. If it all ends at that moment, then it's over. And I guess if we're all supposed to be more than the sum of our parts, then I guess whatever is left behind is whatever people think of you. But yeah, like I said, people do stupid things as a choice. I think doctors smoke, right? People do things that they're not supposed to do. Psychiatrists and psychologists, they have problems, even though they understand and probably know about why they have those problems. But the sense to do something else, well, that can be different. We all have blind spots, I think. Like I said, I'm not pontificating or anything like that. I'm just experiencing and explaining my experience, as it were. And I think oftentimes the reason that, people are stupid and the reason that people will make that choice in spite of knowledge, because knowledge isn't power, sometimes it's a burden, is because it's maybe our way of giving a middle finger to life. That in spite of whatever it is that we arrived at, we gained, or we have, and so much, regardless to who you are, what people perceive about you, it's just out of reach sometimes, or really not within our control. And that can be a bitter pill to swallow and a contention to have. And, sometimes maybe it's better to just believe the lie because it's more comfortable. I mean, if you could spend an entire time of your life living a lie, but be happy versus being absolutely said and sewn to the truth and be miserable, I'm not exactly sure which one is the one that people are going to always choose. I'm going to say that I wouldn't be surprised by the latter, meaning people choose the lie. Doesn't mean it's always good. Doesn't mean it's always healthy. And I think sometimes that's maybe the reason why I don't really think too much in terms of change happens, because I think it has to come down to more of who we are. And so this journey for myself doing this here, that's probably the biggest part of it. And so that's what this vlog has to do and the meaning behind it. So if you listen this far, thank you. And I think that's going to do it for this Friday vlog. So until next time, take care.